I'm going to go over certain problems in the review packet that we handed out that we're going to grade for completion. Now the answers are in the back of the packet, but in case you forget how to do some problems, I'm going to go over some. So I am going to do number 2 for you on page 1. Number 2 says the absolute value of -6 minus 4v minus 2 equals 4. Now, when you solve an absolute value equation, your goal is to isolate the absolute value sign. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Now, once your absolute value sign is isolated, you would cover this up and say to yourself, well, what would give me an answer of 6? Well, it would be the absolute value of 6 or the absolute value of -6. So that means I let -6 minus 4v equal 6, and I let -6 minus 4v equal -6. So I actually have 2 equations. So here, -4v equals 12, v equals -3, and -4v equals 0, so v equals 0. So my answer to number 2 would be v equals -3 or v equals 0. Now, let's look at graphing this. So we're going to look at number 6. So number 6 is graphing y equals -3 times the absolute value x plus 1 plus 3. Okay, so to graph this, the first thing I find is the vertex. Now, my vertex is -1, 3. I find that because it's the opposite of what's in the absolute value sign with the x and 3. So -1, 3. Now, I know that this is going to go down. I go down 1, 2, 3, over 1 in both directions. Then down 1, 2, 3, over 1 in both directions. 1, 2, 3. And this is how you graph this. So when you're graphing an absolute value function, you first find the vertex, and then you rise and run according to whatever the a value is. Now, you get to skip 9, 10, 11, and 12, because although we briefly went over that, we did not test or quiz you on that. So let's look at number 14. Now, number 14 is k squared plus 32 equals -12k. And the directions here are solved by factoring. So first, I'm going to apply the zero product property rule and put everything on one side and set it equal to 0. Now I'm looking for 2 numbers that when multiplied equal 32, but when added, add up to 12. So what comes to mind is 8 and 4, because 8 times 4 is 32, 8 plus 4 is 12. So since this leading coefficient is a 1, I can take a shortcut and just say k plus 8 times k plus 4 equals 0. Now, you can only use the shortcut when the leading coefficient is 1. Then your magic numbers actually become your answers. So this means either k equals -8 or k equals -4. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's look at number 15. Now, these directions say solve by finding the square root. So, number 15, again, I would write the equation, but now, because I'm not going to solve by factoring, I'm not going to apply the zero product property rule. If I'm going to solve by taking square roots, I want to isolate my x squared term. Now, the reason I can solve by using the square root is you'll notice there is no x term, there's just an x squared term. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. I get 8x squared equals negative 15. Divide by 8, divide by 8. X squared equals negative 15 over 8. So here there's a big red flag, because if I go to square root both sides, can I take the square root of a negative number and get a real solution? No, I cannot. And since in Algebra 1 we're only dealing with real solutions, there is no real solution. Okay, now we're going to solve by using the quadratic formula. Well, I'm not going to do one of those because that's brand new and you shouldn't need a review on that. So let's drop down to number 22. And 22 says simplify, and that your answer should only contain positive exponents. So now we have to remember the rule. What do you do when you multiply with exponents? Well, the rule says if you have the same base, you can add the exponents. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Y squared plus y to the negative second becomes 0. Not 0, I'm sorry. It's y to the 0, which is 1. So this final answer would just be 2. Okay. Now, let's do 26. 26 says factor. Well, now we have to remember how to factor 2 terms. When you factor 2 terms, a binomial, it's either going to be taking out the GCF or the difference of squares. There's obviously no GCF, but this is the difference of squares. So I take the square root of the first minus the square root of the second times the square root of the first plus the square root of the second. Okay, and now let's look at number 32. 32 is a graphing. 3x plus 4y equals negative 16. So I can either graph this using my x and y intercepts. So to find my x and y intercepts, I let x equal 0, cover up the x, y equals negative 4, or I let y equal 0, x equals negative 16/3. So I can graph negative 16/3 is negative 5 1/3, and that's x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say 5 1/3, and y was negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how that would be graphed. But now I'm going to check my answer by putting it into slope-intercept form. So another way to graph is to set it equal to y. And I get negative 3/4 x minus 4. I start at negative 4, which is my y-intercept. And I go down 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. Or I can go up 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And it looks like, my line's not straight, but it looks like I graphed it correctly. So we just reviewed how to graph from slope-intercept form and from standard form. Okay. Now, why don't we graph a system of inequalities? So if you look at page 6, we are going to graph number 42. Y is less than negative 6x minus 3. Y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 2. So to graph this, I know this is going to be a dashed line, this is going to be a solid line. To graph this, I go to the y-intercept, which is negative 3, and the slope is negative 6. I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. over 1, or I can go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. And this is going to be a dashed line. And then it says y is less than that. So less than, where the y values are less than, means I would shade this side. Now to double check and make sure I'm right, 0, 0 should not be in my solution set. So let's see if it's true. Is 0 less than negative 3? No. So I'm glad it's not in my solution set. So that's correct. Now y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 2. So I have a y-intercept of 2, and now I go down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. Okay, and this is my other line. And this is y is greater. So that means just this little section in between these two is what gets shaded, and my answer is just that little v in that section. Okay, so I shade above, and that is the solution. And that ends this video.